Greetings, everyone, and welcome to On the Safe Side, a monthly podcast hosted by the editors of Safety & Health magazine, the official magazine of the National Safety Council. Thank you all for joining us for our September 2025 episode of the podcast, which is number 67 in our history. This is Barry Bottino, Associate Editor at Safety & Health. I'm joined by my fellow associate editors and podcast co-pilots, Alan Ferguson and Kevin Drewley. And very shortly, you'll hear our live episode from the show floor at the NSC Safety Congress Expo in Denver. But first, a quick word from our sponsor for this episode. Velocity AHS, the global leader in environmental health and safety and architect of Velocity AI, bringing human-centered artificial intelligence to workplace safety, has partnered with Fit for Work, the nationwide leader in injury prevention and ergonomics, to deliver world-class musculoskeletal disorder risk mitigation. Velocity EHS industrial ergonomics software uses Velocity AI to deliver accurate ergonomics-related risk assessments through an advanced 3D model for motion capture. Fit for Work's specialists bring unmatched in-field expertise working directly with employees to deliver tailored services that promote safe behaviors and prevent injuries. Together, Velocity AHS and Fit for Work unite human-centered AI software with expert on-site services, helping organizations work smarter and safer. Learn more at ehs.com/NSC25. That's ehs.com/NSC25. Now, let's go to the Safety Huddle on the show floor at Congress and Expo.
Well, hello to everyone here in the Safety Huddle 2025 NSC Safety Congress and Expo here in Denver. Glad to have you with us today. This is the On the Safe Side podcast, the podcast of Safety & Health magazine. We're excited to be here in Denver. My name is Barry Bottino, one of the editors at Safety & Health. My colleagues are here, Kevin Drewley and Alan Ferguson. And we have a special guest with us today. Next to us is keynote speaker, veteran safety leader Brian Fielkow, who will be presenting tomorrow the leadership keynote here in Denver at 10 a.m. And we'd like to welcome Brian and thank you for joining us. We're going to talk about safety leadership today. Thanks for being with us, Brian.
Thanks for having me, and what a great show. This has been just wonderful to be here in Denver.
Great. Well, first of all, we want to start with, you once said that safety is not a department, it's a way of life. And I wanted to ask you, how can organizations put that principle into practice?
Well, I think there has to be an enterprise-wide understanding that you can't delegate safety, right? It's not the responsibility of a safety department. What's the role of a safety professional? It's to teach, train, coach, mentor, but ultimately, who's responsible for the execution of safety? Operations, because your operations teams are the people with their hands on the levers, people responsible for executing on your process. So there's got to be a clear understanding of that, and it starts with leadership, making it clear that we're all responsible for safety. Now, a couple hands-on ideas is make sure your incentives line up. You sort of get what you pay for. And sometimes if people are incentivized only on production with no regard to safety, guess what? That's what they're going to focus. So as a leader, it's what you celebrate and what you tolerate that will create an enterprise-wide understanding that safety is a way of life. It's not a priority. It's a core value. It's not number one, number two, number three. It's who we are. It's ingrained in who we are. It's got to start with leadership, and then it must be owned by every employee in the organization. I'll give you a story. When I was running my logistics company, Monday we would have our operations meeting, and guess what? We'd hear about the safety team. They don't get it. They're in the way. And then
Sure.
Tuesday we'd have our safety meeting, and guess what? The operations people aren't following process, et cetera. So I said my life is too short, so we quit that. We had a joint safety operations meeting every week. So part of the way you tear down the silo is by who you invite to the table, integrated, comprehensive.
Absolutely.
Brian, there can be a disconnect between how safety is perceived by frontline workers versus senior leaders. What are some ways to close that gap?
The best way is to ask. So I'm a big fan of what I call gap analysis or safety perception surveys, and I like to ask the same questions and then have them segmented by, how did more tenured employees answer? How did the C-suite answer compared to the front lines? Now, you're going to find gaps, right? Doesn't mean the organization's broken. It means you've got an opportunity for powerful conversations to close those gaps. So the best way is to ask. And I'm also a big fan of walk-arounds. But what I heard today at Campbell was just fantastic. It's like, if you're going to walk around and it's going to be perfunctory, and you go back in to the office afterwards, it's not doing anything. It's walking around with a purpose. When I would do safety walk-arounds, I would make sure to bring with me some frontline employees. And what I see is not important. Tell me what you see. Let's make sure that the systems, let's make sure that the processes are working. So as much as possible, I think that the way to close the gap is to show up with empathy. And the best way to show up with empathy is to make sure you're seeing through the eyes of the people who are responsible for executing safety, the people with their hands on the levers and the wheels. And I think psychological safety can't be overstated, because you have to create an environment to close the gap where people are free and comfortable speaking with you. There's no fear of retribution. Because in a healthy safety culture, it can't be top down. Communication has to flow up, down, left, right, sideways. And psychological safety, creating an environment that I want to hear from you. I respect what you have to say. I'm going to listen, and I'm going to act on it. And by the way, if I can't act on it, I'm going to at least tell you why. I think helps bridge that gap.
Now, Brian, we all know that change is hard. So how can safety leaders kind of balance the need for action with showing compassion and support for workers during changes in safety procedures?
I'll give you a couple thoughts. First of all, just do it never really worked except for marketing a particular brand of shoe. And there it works spectacular. But in our industries, it doesn't work. You've got to take time to explain the why. And so I think, that's the key, is explain the why, what's in it for everybody. Several years ago, we made a decision in our logistics business to put in dual-facing cameras. And by the way, if you're running a fleet and you don't have dual-facing cameras, let's talk afterwards. I mean, they're a must. That's just my little bias. But there was a lot of controversy around that, especially at the time, because the adoption was shorter. The adoption period was less mature than it is today. So we put a beta group together. We didn't just say, okay, cameras are going in Monday, good luck. We put together a group of people, some who we thought would be apt to adopt change, others who, naysayers. We said, would you give it a try for 90 days? And the beta group, after they were done with it, and they saw things that they otherwise would have been ticketed for, or incidents that they might have been blamed for, ripped up. It created alignment. So in other words, the more you can bring the people in with you that have to live with the change and operationalize the change, I think the more you can lead change. But whatever the change initiative is, may not be up for a vote. It may be something you've decided to do, but it's all grounded in trust. If the organization, if there's trust in the organization, it doesn't mean that you won't have naysayers, but the organization will be more apt to adopt the change if there's no trust, because people will be saying, well, what's up? What do they want? What's up with them? So I think just building your culture and building a culture of trust and being a well-led company enables change.
Brian, you touched on communication a little bit, and when it comes to safety communication, are there ways that leaders can kind of facilitate those conversations in that safety communication?
I think we have to look at different levels in the company, but in every level, a couple thoughts I'd have for you is less monologue, more dialogue. So I think it's important to be sure that when you're making your point, you're communicating a message, you're listening as intently as you're communicating. Leaders have to communicate with empathy. They have to walk in the shoes of their frontline employees, their frontline managers, in order to effectively communicate change. I think that communication really is the leader's paramount responsibility, because the best plan in the world, if poorly communicated, may not get off the ground. I think safety can't be sometimes thing. So let's have a quarterly safety meeting. No, let's get safety on every agenda. I would rather see the communication done in small, very frequent, digestible bites than we ignore it for 6 months and then we get everybody together.
Right.
It feels more like a project as opposed to something that's woven into the culture. And by the way, not everything has to be serious. So when you're communicating, have fun with it. Make sure you're shouting out the successes. You're celebrating your heroes. One thing that worked really well for us is we would take a little marketing skill. A lot of times we think about marketing for our outside, for our customers.
Sure.
No, use that marketing skill internally. So we had a brand, D2P, Driving to Perfection. It was a logo, and the logo was on every uniform. It was in and out of every truck and every forklift. It was a visual affirmation of your values. So in other words, get creative on how you communicate and make it fun and make it understandable. Do I have a second?
Sure.
Okay. One of the biggest mistakes I think we make is when we're communicating process.
Yes.
Look at your audience, and if your audience that the process is intended for reads at a 6th or 7th grade level, and your process is like reading a law book, I'm sorry, but you don't have process. You have words on paper that nobody's going to understand. You got to be sure that the process is understandable by and for the intended audience. In my company, our drivers wrote our handbook, and that was pretty powerful.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Brian, in what ways can leaders show accountability if an incident does occur on the job?
I think one of the mistakes we make as leaders when an incident occurs on the job, we make a few, okay? But the first one is who's to blame? Let's not go there. The first thing we've got to do is make sure that the injured, whether they're our employees or a member of the public or a contractor, are taken care of. You lead with humanity. If it's a serious injury, you're going to get the family involved. You're not worried about fault. You're going to own it. You're going to make sure that anybody involved are taken care of. And something that's significant, you got to take care of the witnesses too, because they saw something that they're not used to seeing. So I think it's critical that you show up with humanity, empathy. We'll get to root cause. We'll get to all that later. But in the immediate aftermath of an incident, I think you've got to just be laser focused on the people. And then when you're looking at root cause, you've got to look at individual and systemic factors. Okay, it may be that the fault is 100% the employees. Okay, it's rare, but it could be. Normally, there's something in the underlying. There could be systemic issues, training issues. There could be undue production pressure, fatigue. So I think you always want to make sure that when you show accountability, you're looking at all possible contributing factors. I really believe you want to focus, you want to create what's called a just culture. And what a just culture says is, the way a lot of us were trained, a lot of us were brought up is, you were trained, and if you did as you were trained, you wouldn't make a mistake. You made a mistake, you'll be punished. That accomplishes nothing. What just culture looks at is the contributing factors, and from the employee's standpoint, did the employee make an honest mistake? And quite frankly, most safety failures, safety issues, have their roots in an honest mistake. Or was the behavior deliberate, reckless, and just individual, unrelated to systems? That should guide your actions. And in most cases, when you're dealing with an honest mistake, you might look at training opportunities. You might look at process issues. Is the process understood? And I think that's how you show accountability. Is you look at all aspects, the individual and the organizational. And here's the thing: is you never sweep the lessons learned under the rug. Every lesson, every service safety issue plants the seeds of building a smarter, more resilient organization. So you have always got to make sure that you're converting the lessons learned into actionable improvements.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brian, safety is our number one priority. It's not a phrase that you're fond of. What makes the word priority something that organizations and leaders shouldn't lean on?
Yeah, this is one case where I really think words matter. Because priorities shift. Priorities compete for each other. I could come into my office tomorrow with a list of 10 nice things here, and the phone rings and we have a service problem or a customer problem or whatever. Well, those priorities got rearranged, and that's okay. Priorities change, they shift. So if safety is a priority, that means that something can compete for safety. That, oh man, we're really busy today, so forget the pre-trip. We're really busy today. We'll get to the deferred. We'll defer the maintenance and get to it tomorrow. If safety is a core value, and that's what safety should be referred to as a core value, it's immutable. Nothing can compete with your values or for your values. So yeah, production pressure is real. Customer problems are real. But that doesn't mean that anything can be allowed or should be allowed to compete for safety. So the priorities are the things that we live with every day. It's the joy of being in business. They shift. They should shift, right? Values don't shift. And no priority, no matter how urgent it seems, can compromise core values. And I mean, the landscape is littered with people who cut corners. Some of the things have made national news, where they've cut corners. They look the other way to meet an immediate goal, and it's backfired terribly. So I do think it's important to kind of not call safety a priority, instead refer to what it is, which is a non-negotiable core value that's woven into our DNA, and nothing, and I mean nothing, can compete for it.
Brian, we chatted before the podcast about a lot of great sessions going on here, and you enjoyed some this morning. And I wanted to ask you, first of all, about your leadership keynote tomorrow. Are there some takeaways you want folks to take from your presentation tomorrow?
Oh, I'm so excited for this keynote because, there's so much going on out in the world, right? I mean, technology is moving at lightning speed. Every time you turn on the news, something is changing. There's a regular, agencies are getting defunded. There's cuts. The workforce is turning over sometimes faster than we can keep up with. But all those things are largely out of our control. So I'm going to focus intensely on what can we control. And my presentations are very light on theory and very heavy on actionable takeaways. Ideas you can take, adopt, make your own, and implement tomorrow. Implement the minute you leave the room. We're going to be focused on a couple of things. First of all, we got to change our mindset. We got to change how we think about safety. Then we're going to talk about how we lead. And by the way, that includes managing our executives. Our C-suites need to be managed. Then we're going to talk about how we engage our employees, how to create unconditional respect for process. And then we're going to lean into accountability and resilience and building a culture of resilience. Look, I'd like to say nothing bad will ever happen, but it will. It's our choice to lean into it, learn from it, and become a more resilient company. And these are things that if we execute right, if we do it properly, the opportunities right now are unlimited. So the idea is there's a lot of stuff we can't control. We should be mindful of it, but it should not impact how we show up and what we do. And that's my focus is, in this environment, what can we do to bring our organizations to whole new levels? It's going to be a really fun conversation.
Great, looking forward to it. There are a lot of things to look forward to here at the show, and your presentation is one I'm looking forward to. I wanted to ask you and the gentlemen here, Kevin and Alan, what you guys are looking forward to the rest of the show.
I was going to defer to our guests, but I'll say we're asking you questions in the journalistic style. Each of us are journalists in training, but for me, it's really just, and we're experiencing just sitting in here, the energy of the show. I mean, a lot of us encounter, we've spoken with you for other stories or magazines, but we see so many experts, whether they're in booths or giving keynotes or just other sessions. It's just nice to be around the energy, to see folks. You might already know their faces to the names, but just to be out and the energy of the show is just terrific. A lot of us have been doing this for several years, but it really never wears off. So that's what I would say.
I'm actually looking forward to what I would call OSHA Day tomorrow, along with acting leader Amanda Wood-Lyhow. We've got current activities. We've got most interesting cases. So it's really a good chance to hear from the key safety agency in our government.
And don't forget about Top 10, where we where we also, of course, look at Kevin's fashion choices each year.
Each year you make light of that, and all I'll say is, I mean, you see the half dozen polos I wear on our team Zoom calls, so it's nice to get relatively dressed up.
No, I mean, look, I love everything about the education, all the great vendor opportunities in the exhibit hall, but my number one is networking, right? It's enough with the Teams meetings and Zoom meetings, right?
Absolutely.
And so just to get to meet new people, new ideas, people that force you to think differently. Just for example, this morning, Lorraine's remarks, but then also at Campbell, changing the old thinking from kind of a compliance, try-our focus to SIF. I mean, that's a mind shift. It's a mind shift that we have to make. And so just you walk away from an event like this with a whole new perspective. It doesn't mean you abandon everything you've learned before. That's the foundation on which you build. But now you walk away from an event like this with new ideas to help bring your organization to a new level. It's those new ideas and the new people and the networking that I love about this event.
Yeah, we appreciate you being here, Brian. And Kevin, you're going to wrap us up.
Absolutely. No, just want to thank you once again, Brian. I know you're preparing for some other speaking engagements here and for your keynote, so we appreciate you taking time. I know it's a busy week for you to join us in the Safety Huddle. And we also want to thank everyone out there with us. Some of you were here from start time. Some of you wandered off. I saw some people munching on popcorn, so that's the essence of live entertainment, I think. So we thank you very much. And for this episode, keep your eyes peeled for our safety on safetyandhealthmagazine.com, our show daily newsletter. You'll be able to listen to this recording, and for all of our past episodes, you can go to safetyandhealthmagazine.com/podcast. We'll be back next month, not live, unfortunately, in this setting, but we'll be back next month to have more safety-related discussions, talk to trusted voices from around the profession, and hopefully make you smile a little. In the meantime, please stay on the safe side.